Good afternoon, everyone. We'll be starting our webinar shortly in just about 2 minutes. So we'll give others a chance to join our Zoom room and then we'll begin. Okay, let's get started. Good day and welcome to the Center of Excellence in Frailty Informed Care at Perley Health's webinar series. I am Kimberly Carla Campbell, a research associate here at Perley, and it is, of course, my pleasure to greet and welcome you to today's presentation. Before we begin, I would like to let you know that any questions or comments that you have, they can be typed into the Q&A area, which will be just at the bottom of your screen. And of course, I'll field them to the presenter at the end. Today, we are very happy to have with us Dr. Namrata Bagaria, who is an age tech researcher and entrepreneur. She holds interdisciplinary degrees in medicine and public health from Harvard University and digital transformation. NAM excels in rapid experimentation, turning abstract ideas into minimum viable products. Her multicultural and multilingual background allows her to implement projects in diverse settings, including Afghanistan, rural and urban India, and inner city areas of the USA and Canada. Currently, Nam is a research assistant at Perley Health. So we're happy to have her, by the way, working on a virtual reality for vision project, while also pursuing her PhD at the University of Ottawa. We welcome Nam to our webinar series, and I now invite her to share her presentation with us. Welcome, Nam.
Thank you, Kim. Hello, everyone. A pleasure to meet you. Kim, can you give me the share settings, please? Thank you. Great. So I would like to begin by saying that today's presentation is a culmination of a startup that I run. It's called Seniors Junction. And last year in the summertime, we were able to conduct a pilot with Perley Health for it. And so it's very exciting for me to share my learning on lifelong learning, and feel free to ask as many questions. And the purpose of this lecture is to give you an overview of lifelong learning and some trends and basically what we've done so far. And so it's going to be like history to the future, and it's meant to be a more comprehensive overview rather than particular detail about one particular aspect. But if you have questions, and if I know the answer, I will try to answer, or I'll point you to the resources. So I always like to start my lectures with the definition. So basically, what is lifelong learning? And it's basically ongoing, voluntary, and self-motivated pursuit of knowledge, either for personal or professional reasons. Now, by joining this webinar, all of us are also doing lifelong learning. And in terms of its individuals, it helps people's competitiveness, employability in work, when it's professionally done, in social inclusion, active citizenship, and personal development. These are the main three things which seniors get out of it. And there's also some other definitions which might help you. So in the United States, they call something Lifelong Learning Institute, which is organized group of people over 50 years of age who frequently meet for college level study for its intellectual challenge and social enjoyment. So for me, what really stands out is intellectual challenge, because a lot of the programming in the senior sector is a lot more around entertainment rather than engagement. And that's fair too, you need entertainment. But when you look for things which are more robust for cognitive prevention, then I would say you would want to go for lifelong learning. And we'll cover that in later slides. And this is another term, University of Third Age, U3A, which is basically the same thing, where you have education and stimulation of mainly retired people in the community. And many countries are doing pretty well. A lot of my content is mostly Western world centric, or rather US and Canada centric, a little bit of France, but mainly the Western world. So I've not touched. So this is I'll just go through the timeline because I was very curious about when did it begin. So in 1962, there was the first Institute for Retired Professionals founded in New York City in association with the New School for Social Research. Then in 1977, there were two things that happened. So Harvard started an Institute of Learning for Retirement, and Duke started one too. So these two universities were the pioneers. In 73, okay, I had this mistake. So in 73, something started in France, which was the social sciences. And then in US, again, you had UCLA, which started a Plato Society. Then early 1980s, so in 73, once France started it, it moved to the United Kingdom. And then by 81, you had something in Connecticut happening. Then you had something at American University. Then in 84, around then, it moved to Australia. Then again, mid 80s, there were almost 50. So it started, let's say, around 70s in the US, and within less than 10 years, they were already 50. And these institutes together formed this something called Elder Hostel Institute of Network. So there were 75 by 88. And then again in the 90s, this concept spread further in France. In 94, US had almost 300 members. 2001, this is one of the most important movements that happened in US. Osher Foundation started funding very handsomely for this kind of organization. Like, so in 2002, they started giving like $100,000 grant to different campuses. And by now they have 123 campuses, which is very good. And by 2006, the same network in the US became around 350 members. If you see in Canada, this only started 2007. So we are sort of lagging behind. And mostly it's around Ontario, in and around Ontario. In US, the same network became a virtual university. And then in 2013, they changed their names. In Canada, by 2018, so let's say 10 years, it has 21 groups now. And in 2019, US has around 400 members. And by 2023, Australia moved to 250, around 100,000 members. So you can see that there are there's a major movement in different parts of the world, with the US, of course, leading because it has more population. Canada's recently joined that trend. And so this gives you an overview of that it's a field which is growing. It's only after World War II these topics started becoming important because we started living longer. And it was mainly due to discoveries of penicillin, improvement in public health hygiene, better quality of life. All those things improve life. So generations before this didn't live as long. So they didn't need to do something when they were that older because nobody lived that longer. And so how does lifelong learning happen? So they can be either instructor-led, where you have somebody who's either an expert or a reasonable expert who present content and then people listen. Sometimes they have Q&A. Sometimes it's peer-led, where you're given a group discussion. There are many companies which have content available, and then you just buy it and you give it to individuals to discuss it. And I added this third one, which is very, I think, an important thing and deserves a mention, is library networks. And I think Canada is pretty strong on public library network. US also is strong, and other countries too in the Western world, pretty strong on networks. And they also sometimes they have lecture series. Sometimes they have like books, or sometimes you can borrow LinkedIn Learning or other courses on demand, which you can borrow from the library to learn. So I think these are good opportunities. And typical subjects of interest are, arts, classic studies, conversations, computers, crafts, debate, drama, film, cinema, history. So it's more liberal arts centric. Of course, there's some now that people have gotten into technology training and those topics. Sometimes it's also simple things like games like bridge and duplicate bridge, or fitness classes or concerts and things like that. All things that I would like to do in my free time, honestly. And then there's some which are more interested in current affairs. I know there's a club at Perley Health which does current affairs. And some people are more into science and technology, but in a less, less formal, more practical ways of doing it. Some individuals are into local history, genealogy, or they sometimes you study through photographs, like a group of seniors will meet and you take images of city where you went to or items where you went to. I did a quick literature review just today morning. And so the first literature starts around somewhere around 71. This is where it's showing to 23. So I only took the English results. And if you can see, like, the 954 journals, 209 chapters. So even though I typed here 1950, but the papers were only showing from 71. So this gives you like an overall view of what literature is available. There's quite a bit of literature available, but it's pretty diverse. But there's some good, what do you call, practice papers, or what do you, handbooks available. And so I've tried to summarize the information. I'm not going to go through this academically. And of course, the next few slides, I have used ChatGPT to help me. But this is basically to help you know what are the facilitators for lifelong learning. So having a flexible learning environment is important. And if you have questions on any of these particular items, we can discuss in Q&A, because I just wanted to go through this just in an overall way. Tailored curriculum, like even in Seniors Junction, we've taken a U Ottawa curriculum and changed it to community-based, and there's a lot of changes that go in it. So my colleague, as you'll see later on, he's a retired professor from Ottawa U, and we did that together. Community engagement, health and wellness support, like, if you may want to make sure the place is accessible for people with walkers, so accessibility accommodations, encouraging people to ask questions, because a lot of seniors are shy or to ask questions, especially female seniors. So you want to encourage them to ask questions. Recognition and validation, giving them certificate of completion, things like that, or some prizes. Financial accessibility, again, there's a whole range of affordability. You want to make sure you know what level you are offering. Learning support services, again, this could be as simple as, caption enabled videos, to actually having somebody who can talk to them if they have doubts, like having Q&A sessions. Cultural sensitivity, and even diversity, because Canada is a very diverse country, so you want to make sure the content speaks to different kinds of audiences. Technology integration, it can be a facilitator, but not for everyone. But for some it is, especially people aging at home who know how to use Zoom and all that. It's a big facilitator. And one of the biggest facilitators is intergenerational activities. What are the barriers? So the first is, of course, access. Either transport, like you can't go to that place, or that place you can go, but guess what? They don't have accessible location, right? Like they may not have wheelchair-friendly entrances or things like that. Or availability of courses. You can live in a place where there's nothing being offered. So, for example, if you live in the north, further north, I mean. Financial constraints, again, not everybody can afford. Low digital literacy or lack of access to technology. In the pandemic, this really came through, and everybody knows this. Physical or cognitive health issues, right? So different learning capacities depending on, let's say, if you're short of breathing, you may not be able to sit for the class. Or if you are at an advanced stage of cognition, cognitive impairment, you may need more audio-based musical kind of things than just hardcore, like pedagogy, which needs video or complex instructions. This is one of the biggest barriers, is self-barrier, or actually stigma due to ageism. So a lot of this, it is learned, and a lot of it is actually happening. So it depends on where this is happening. lack of time or awareness. A lot of individuals may not know that these options are available. Inflexible learning environments, social isolation, language or literacy barriers, lack of motivation or interest. This is very highly possible. You see it sometimes. I have clients who want to buy this for their parents, but their parents are not interested in doing it. So it happens all the time. And insufficient outreach and marketing of educational programs. This is a big problem because let's say if I want to do Instagram, Facebook marketing, the thing is not many seniors are looking to buy from there. And then when I have to do paper print marketing, it's so expensive as a small company, you can't print that much paper. So, it becomes hard for you to reach people, even if your SEO is optimized, even if you are on YouTube or social media, otherwise, it's a big barrier. Marketing to older adults is a big barrier because a lot of it depends on paper, and paper is very expensive now. So on the good side, so I haven't shared any disadvantages of lifelong learning. So one may say I'm biased, and so I'm pretty much biased about the pros. Disadvantages, I would say the barriers that you see, that's what I would address that, because there's really nothing. It's like, I don't think anything can go wrong if you learn something. Cognitive benefits. So if you start early, which means if you start in your early 50s or early 60s, it can give you a better brain health with cognitive function and lower risk of dementia. And the other part of it is neuroplasticity. So while we say you should do familiar things and listen to familiar music or do things which you did when you were younger, but there's also merit to doing things which you've never done before, because that builds new neural connections in your brains. Also, there's a sense of achievement that you will see. It boosts self-esteem because you're out there, you're learning new things, you have something to talk to your grandchildren, you have something to talk to your friends about. So it gives you new content to talk about, right? And also it stimulates curiosity. As you'll see in the survey results, the number one reason why Perley tenants wanted to do lifelong learning was for curiosity. So a lot of this magically shows up in our surveys also. So I'm happy that it validated each other. But enhanced social connections, definitely. Like we've had people at Perley tell us in person that, oh, I didn't know this person lived in building this or that, and now I'm friends with them because we like the same music or we like the same films or whatever. Intergenerational connections. Of course, when you have that, you foster new friendships. Adaptation and resilience. So continuously learning, of course, as increases your ability to cope with new things. If you've never tried something, but once you try it, like we are doing VR now, and we see a lot of seniors who come and they try it, they're like, oh, I've never done this before. But then by the end of like 2 games, they're like, oh, wow, this is cool. I can do this myself. So that aha moments are very high and your sense of confidence is high. And then they all want to go and show off to their children that, look, I'm doing VR now. So, it's a pretty cool thing to have. Problem solving skills. Of course, as society grows, the way your children, grandchildren behave also changes. So if you keep learning and keep updated, you know how to, interact with them or deal with them or solve new problems like smaller families or isolation, because then you have other communities of interest. Improved health and well-being. I think lifelong learning, there's research which shows better mental health outcomes, including reduced depression and anxiety, and overall healthier lifestyle. Because what I have seen is when we did the study with Pearly, there was one particular lady, she was classified as a depression, but actually she was a shut-in and she would not attend things. And eventually when she came the first time, she was not properly dressed, like she was a little disheveled, but like by the end of 8 weeks, she was really dressing up. She got some new clothes and I was really happy to see her transformation. And professional and volunteer opportunities. As you know, a lot of seniors, some of them are very active. So some of them end up doing career transition. For example, my co-founder, we launched this company when he turned 65. So he retired as a professor. He took a break of 2 or 3 years. He lost his wife and he was recovering in that time. But then we met shortly after, and then we started this company. So, hey, volunteer opportunities. I know Pearly volunteers are so important in so many things that they do, and other volunteers too. So I think if you do lifelong learning, it can also open the avenues in which you volunteer. For example, you may be someone who really likes opera, and now you can usher at an opera house, increase the cultural and civic participation. So definitely lifelong learning promotes arts, culture, history, and diverse perspectives. This particular aspect is what Seniors Junction is really good at. And civic participation, definitely voting and community involvement, that. A lot of political parties quote a lot of seniors to get their votes. You'll see that happening soon. And there are studies which show that doing lifelong learning also has longevity benefits, possibly due to cognitive and social benefits, because we know that loneliness is as bad as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so if you're with people learning new things, you can reverse that harm. I think lastly, a lot of seniors know so much, like you get to learn so much from them. And if you put systems in place, you can even have them teach. So for example, again, going back to Paul, retired professor, he does all the teaching and faculty stuff at Seniors Junction, and which is great. He gets to use what he did for 30 years for a community. And also, he's gotten pretty tech savvy. All our other clients have gotten pretty tech savvy. Maybe they knew email first. Now they know Zoom, they know Google Calendar, they learn, other things. So I think even with my mom, I think she's learned so much of technology just by being with us. And given that I don't even live in the same country as her, so she had to learn a few things. So yeah. So the way ours journey started in 2020 during the pandemic, it was around Christmas time, and we hosted a Christmas party online where Paul started singing the carols and started telling us the history of all these carols. And then I was like, you know what, we could make a company out of something like this. And that's how Seniors Junction was born, actually. Well, the idea was floating around before to do something with isolation. And so we had registered the company, but I was still on the fence on what would we do to solve isolation. And so then this idea jumped out. And then we, of course, interviewed, you may know a few familiar faces from this, but we interviewed a lot of people across Canada, US, whether they are doctors, this is the CEO of Chartwell, some seniors themselves. He's a retired professor, Dementia Society. This doctor works at Ottawa Hospital. So we interviewed a lot of people, grief counselor, entrepreneurs, retired professor again, who basically gave their 2 cents on what can be done to solve social isolation. So we took those learnings and created the program. And what really hit me hard was, even Paul was pretty surprised. One of the residents who was 95 at another home, she said, well, the senior living is like heaven's waiting room. And it was not something that you want your grandmother or great grandmother to say, but that really, like, it had an emotional impact on me personally and even Paul. And so we didn't want this to be heaven's waiting room for people. It should be more than that. And our goal is to help activities professional move beyond entertainment and engage seniors with music through lifelong learning. So we've taken music as a subject because our team can deliver that well, and also the surveys show that. So I'll show you some. So the pilot which we did, which was in 2022, one was at Perley, which was for 8 weeks from June to August. Then we did one in Calgary for 4 weeks. And this was hybrid delivery because even back then, we're still in pandemic. So we would go in person. I went in person while Paul was remote. And here the activities professional were managing it in person. And then we also had just purely 8 weeks Zoom based, which was 2 times we did that with some seniors in Burlington. And then we did 12 weeks in person. So we've tried like the whole thing, like hybrid in person or online. So the pilot results, and you may know a few residents from here. This is the Great Hall in Perley Health. You can see Paul here faintly. The results from the Perley pilot is basically this. First question was why do you want to do lifelong learning? And so the options were to reduce my schedule, change the schedule, reduce loneliness, get relief from boredom, or to do something meaningful with your time. And so this was the highest voted. So seniors are looking to do meaningful things with their time. Then if you see what topics do you find interesting, so you can see history here, like almost 81%. And then different kinds of music is scored very high when you do the totaling here, like film music is pretty high, choir music, language, psychology. So combine this, we said, okay, let's do something in music and history. So we did an 8-week course of film music history with Perley Health. And Paul also taught that class in URWA for 30 years. And we wanted to know what is their cognitive interest, like why do you want to do this, apart from meaningful things with their time. It's basically the highest rank was for because I'm curious. And this goes back to the slide which I showed in the beginning, that a lot of lifelong learning can help with curiosity. Because I think to be human is to be curious, that's what makes us human, our curiosity. And lifelong learning can help touch aspects of life which is non-medical but crucial to health, because health is not medicines, health is not sick care. That's a part of recovery. And being a doctor myself, I would say there are many things doctors cannot do and should not do. And then after 8 weeks, we conducted another survey. So what did you find from it? So I think people said, it satisfied my curiosity, which was at 88%. They learned something new. Some of them, all of them got something meaningful out of it. And then for different individuals, you can say, some made new friends, but they got to know your fellow residents. That was more important rather than making new friends. They found common interest. It made change in their routines with all the other activities, which are at Perley, and there's so many of them. And surprisingly, it was just very little to do with loneliness and boredom. So even though we thought this is a thing for social isolation, it turned out to be something more for curiosity. And so we sort of changed how we position ourselves after doing this kind of a study. And then we, of course, asked people, what did you like the most? And they loved the group discussions the most. And I think it was a group, it started off with a big group, and then eventually we were 10 people. So they liked the group, they liked the weekly frequency, they liked the conversations. And this was all by design, right? So it was not random talks. Like with every slide, we had a formula. For every 3 slides, we have 1 slide which has a question. And then things like that. And then, of course, what difficulties did people have in a group setting? Most didn't have any difficulties. Sometimes people had issues with hearing or seeing. And if you see, I mentioned the being shy. So people did feel shy in asking questions. So those are things which you want to keep in mind. And of course, learning outcomes for the course. They learned new musical terms. They have a better understanding of music. They understand how music affects the film scenes. They were exposed to new music. So it's also this thing of new, right? You may be hearing the same songs all your life, but now you suddenly have a new repertoire. Like even in my case, I never heard classical music before, Western classical, and now I hear it more often. And nostalgia, big component. They saw movies which they haven't thought of, like Lawrence of Arabia, in a long time. And I came to know that's a very important movie to watch. I have to yet see it. But I did see Space Odyssey. They started watching more movies. In fact, some of them made a little movie club of their own at Perley, and some of them started buying DVDs and watching it together. They have better appreciation. And this was this group. This particular thing is from our in-person feedback, and basically they like the history, they like the music, they like the pictures, because we added a lot of images. For example, if you're listening to JS Bach's piece, we tried to get you the pictures of the church where it was played, or the venues it was played. So make it more like a cultural tour of that city where it was performed. And of course, Paul is a great storyteller. If you've not met him, you must meet him and his teaching. So those things made an impression on that particular small group of people who were the first batch. So based on this, then we created our own scientific model. And it goes like this, that everybody has age-related losses, whether it's, loss of purpose because of retirement or health or a loved one. And over time, there's lack of meaningful activities and less contact with people, which can either lead to sadness or withdrawal. So if you continue your personal inertia, it can diminish your acuity. You can get isolated. You can increase your risk for dementia, because new research shows that 30% dementia risk, 30% is caused by social isolation. And that's a 12-year cohort study at Warwick done. The results were out in 2021. Need for specialized treatment, conditions may be not be reversible. And this is, we've shown it linear. It's not linear, but for the sake of explaining, we have to make it linear. It's all interconnected with each other. But if you do high quality musical interventions, whether it's learning an instrument or just attending lectures for discussion, because not everybody is musically interested to learn something, you can stimulate your new brain centers. You'll have new interests, formal and contextual interests, connections. You will experience beauty, because another aspect of life is to feel wow. That wow feeling cannot come through but arts, but only arts can provide that, interaction. You repeat, once you keep repeating courses, you get in the depth of it, and you can have a new mastery pathway where you can either teach, share, or volunteer. So this is our scientific model. And this is our team. That's Dr. Merkley. And then we have a team of advisors. This is me from 10 years ago. And this is Dr. Walsh. He's a ecosystems advisor. Kareem, he's into tech and product. Bhupesh is into scaling. Rajan's into finance. And Shabnam is a brain health expert. So this is over and above all the content providers we have. This is just our core team. So basically, what is the neuroscience of music appreciation? Because that's what we focus on. Cognitive stimulation, that's same as lifelong learning. But in addition, emotional regulation. Listening to classical music, especially Baroque music, or nostalgia music, like, musicals of, or Frank Sinatra type music, really changes your well-being. Social engagement and neural plasticity. Neural plasticity comes when you keep changing your genres, try something new. And which, at least at Seniors Junction, we have a playlist which is curated based on all these four aspects: something new, something old, something, like how you say in weddings, something borrowed, something blue, something new, I don't know, something like that. And our pedagogy, we had to create our own pedagogy. So basically, we have defined learning objectives for every class. We give them the scope, we give you materials, you have assessments, and the assessments are not like hardcore exams, but just questions. Okay, like, okay, which year was this and that, whatever we've told you in the class. This is for memory retention, and also for people to feel like, oh yeah, I remember this, I paid attention to that. And sometimes we just ask you to like do a reflective piece and come back with that the next week. And in the different instructional strategies, it's mostly a mix of recordings, discussions, learning from your peers, and then your own questions and your own reflections. So we've combined a few strategies together. Yeah, so basically the learning objectives are: you need to understand music history, then you develop an understanding of the musical elements, listening skills, you appreciate different artists and genres. We also include K-pop and regular pop so that they can talk to their grandchildren better. Creative skills, like, reviewing an opera, things like that. Making connections to other subjects. So we put a lot of arts, a lot of history, and a lot of politics, because please remember, music is always political. So we have those historical backgrounds. And the scope is, fundamentals of music, because sometimes people may not know that. You may need a bit of it, not very textbook, but very basic: rhythm, tempo, what is texture, color in music, things like that. Classical music, of course, pop music, world music. People are very interested in Bollywood. I was surprised to know that. So, and of course, music and culture. And then the materials are basically videos, recordings. Sometimes we give them sheet music. We give them resources where they can watch more of some certain kinds of content. For example, we have a YouTube channel where you can get free playlists. We have guest speakers from time to time. For example, somebody who makes those instruments, we invite them. We take them for concerts and performances, both Ottawa and Toronto. So we've partnered with a couple of opera houses and symphony orchestras. So, you get a discount by being a Seniors Junction student, and you get worksheets and activities. The assessments are basically class participation, chat participation. If it's an online thing, then breakout rooms, online polls, trivia, reflections. So it depends on which mode we are delivering, and these are the kind of assessments we have. Not every class will have everything. And our instructional strategies are basically around art and music analysis, historical and cultural context, comparative analysis. Eventually, you learn what's the difference between Mozart and J.S. Bach, Mozart and Haydn, Mozart and Chopin, things like that. Creative expression and technology integration. I think by the end of it, they learn a lot of technology for sure. Our current offering, so sort of we did a lot of those piloting, and the biggest issue we have with the live teaching is actually a business issue. The business issue is it's hard for me to market every 8 weeks and fill the classroom so that it's profitable. So we've sort of made it like a kit now, like a lifelong learning kit, where you have lectures, playlists, and discussions. And there are two versions of it. One is for senior living, where that's like a PDF file, week by week you have content. And the activities professional can run it in their own time, or the B2C, which is someone aging at home, individually can buy that kit, and they get every 2 weeks a live Q&A and social discussions on Zoom. So we've done those things. So basically what the box contains is recorded lectures, curated playlists, musical activities. So you get trivia, quizzes, all that. We've made everything for you. So if you have ABBA in week 1, you will get the whole shebang for ABBA. Recommended readings, live Q&A, and social connection. So we'll give you ideas of what activities, events you can do. And if you're aging at home on your own, we'll tell you, okay, you know what? In summer, you have JS Bach Festival in so-and-so place. So please go there if you can. Like those. And we, of course, tie up with lots of businesses to give them discounts to go there and incentives to go there. This is a bit of show off, sorry, but business as usual. So we got covered by Burlington Post. We won the U Ottawa entrepreneurship competition last year. We came second. And then covered by U Ottawa as an impact story from research to real life. Again, another U Ottawa newspaper covered us. We've also covered by the Hamilton Spectator. So our business is registered in Burlington. That's why it's getting. And then Sandy Hill Images. And then on the website, if you go on seniorsjunction.com, there's also an FAQ section where you can get all the questions on how do I access, how do I download, etc., etc. And this is the example. If you go on the website, you'll see the trial. So anyone attending can try the free trial. It's 3 weeks of content. And you'll see the manual, you'll get a brochure and the science behind what we do. This is a demo. So I'm going to play it for a bit, just for like 5 minutes, not the whole 15 minutes. So let's play this. So I'm going to go from here.
This and what it is, but I'm going to guess that many of you already know. All right, so probably you know that this is by the composer Beethoven, and that this is the first movement, the beginning of the first movement of his Fifth Symphony. And then I'd ask you what you remember about Beethoven. And some of you might say, well, he composed while he was deaf. And that's true. This is the Fifth Symphony. He was already going deaf when he was working on his Third Symphony. By this time, he couldn't hear very well at all. His deafness was a terrible burden, but maybe not quite in the way that many people think. It was not an obstacle to his composing music, because a great composer like Beethoven can hear all the music in his mind as he writes it on the paper. So that was not the problem. The problem of deafness for him was personal, professional, and social. So in other words, he believed it would be difficult, and I'm sure he was right, to persuade, let's say, a patron to rent an orchestra and a hall. for him to have one of his symphonies performed if that patron knew he was deaf. So he tried very hard to make sure that nobody in Vienna, where he was working, found out. I think that's the reason he put on the rough and gruff exterior personality that he cultivated, because I think it enables him to have shorter conversations. People wanted him to leave the room because he was so difficult to get along with. So he could have a conversation and the patron could say, well, I talked with Beethoven briefly and we spoke about his concert, but you know how difficult a man he is to talk to. I was glad when he left. Versus, I talked with Beethoven for half an hour about a possible concert. I had the feeling at times in the conversation that he was hard of hearing. So Beethoven didn't want that. He didn't want anyone to know. And I think that's the reason he made himself disagreeable.
So this is like an example of what kind of content we show. And this is an example of, we show the notes. This is actually Beethoven's personal diary. And then Paul would show these images. And then, of course, there's discussion following that. So I think we try to give a high quality content experience. So this is, I think here is all about Seniors Junction, and I'll quickly want to talk about the future trends in adaptive technology so that there's time for questions. So I think one thing which we also want to do is create digital learning platforms. At the moment, we offer simple things like Dropbox links or emails and things, and Zoom, of course. But we wanted to get a platform out, but we realized that there's a big difficulty in using new technologies. Even the simplest of a learning platform, LMS, become difficult with a different population, right? So user adaptive things with large fonts, high contrast, easy navigation, none of this exists. So if I do this, I have to invest in the technology. At the moment, it's not the right investment financial return wise. And then adaptive learning management systems, basically tailoring content based on individual. So you can see, you can see percentage bars, you can see progress, those kind of things. Then customized learning pathways. So for example, having someone wanting to become a connoisseur versus someone wanting to become a reviewer, versus someone wanting to learn an instrument. So those kind of things. And you can also incorporate AI to adjust the pace. This AI is not actual AI, it's machine learning, simple machine learning. And then one thing which I definitely want to do is create AR, VR applications. So imagine virtual reality based learning experiences where you're actually in Vienna experiencing this lecture. So I think those kind of things, virtual reality tours, I think this has become very popular in the pandemic. I think some of it is the video based, but a lot of AR, VR tools can be very helpful in that. The thing is, the cost of a VR headset right now is not, it's around $400-500. So that's not scalable enough to have, because that many people need it. So it's not scalable, but in the future, it's going to be very cheap, like mobile phones are now. And interdisciplinary and holistic. So which means it's not just going to be content, which is like one discipline. You may have, maybe you work out on ballet music, right? So you're combining ballet music with a workout, and we have all those kind of things. A lot of intergenerational learning, and both for learning online platforms, or you can have mentorship, and of course technology can facilitate the matching and things like that. Flexible learning employment, and maybe even have employment opportunities. So for example, there's a whole movement of hiring boomers, like a silver hiring is happening in some sectors, because that workforce is more punctual on time, has much better work ethics. And sometimes it's more like 2-3 hours part-time gigs sometimes. So it's different kinds of things that are available. Many seniors become entrepreneurs and later in life with whatever skills they have. One of my friends, she retired as an occupational therapist, and now she's an artist who sells handmade glass jewelry, which is really cool. My mom became an artist after retiring. So like lots of things that's possible. A cultural competency, I think one thing is we need to have a lot of inclusivity, because in Canada, many cultures people live and their parents retire. I get all the time demands for, can you do this in Somali language? Can you do this? So we also have diverse teachers, but sometimes we don't have enough facilitators. So we are starting a training program next year where any individual can become a music specialist with us. We give them a training because then they can speak, let's say somebody speaks Mandarin and they are fluent in English. So we teach them the content in English, but then they can run the program because we'll give you all the content in Mandarin. So this ways we are also working on making the same content accessible in different languages. And eventually technology can take, but I think with seniors in the senior business, you want to make high touch points because they like people and they like, so I would say that we use as much as we can to make our internal functions easier. Like my life is easier with Dropbox, but as much as possible on the outside, we have a lot of bridge with a actual human being. Otherwise it gets a little impersonal. And in terms of AI, again, personalization is the number one thing that will happen. It's already started happening. In fact, my thesis is this, it's basically matching people with social activities for isolation. So that's precursor to AI. I'm not making pure AI because I don't know how to code like an engineer. So I'm doing the knowledge translation, and then eventually some software student can make different kinds of algorithms, but I will make them main decision support. Virtual learning, you'll have AI powered assistants, definitely on website. Like if I have to answer the same questions 20 times, I can have an bot answering them. But it is highly likely that the children or the grandchildren would use that than the seniors themselves. And in that case, you should always provide a phone number because some people are more comfortable with the phone. Automated feedback, this is something we can do for quizzes and assignments. So you see, technology is not generic, it's very specific. You need to decide what is most important for you and which part of it do you want to just add a little bit of tech. The thing is, we cannot do this right now because the quizzes are not really online. You have to print it on paper and give sometimes. So everybody's technology skills has to simultaneously improve for an adoption to happen. Otherwise, you're just wasting money. Then enhanced, for example, we use a lot of ChatGPT sometimes to create quizzes, and then sometimes we create our own. So we use things to fasten our work also. And then natural language processing. Eventually, definitely, we would have a Seniors Junction Alexa or Google Home version where you can just talk to it and it will talk back to you. And that piece can be useful for long-term care because where you just have voice command enabled. At the moment, we can't do it, but because the is business-wise, you need to have numbers to justify business diversification. And of course, like I said, health and well-being integration. One thing I would really love to see is we can give people cognitive feedback. Like you have, 10,000 steps, you've walked this much, you've blah, 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 those kind of feedback. So if we can give people cognitive feedback that today you studied for 30 minutes, you learned this thing and your brain, you've built this and this and this. So I think we would definitely work with different research teams to see what kind of feedback is practical. And then maybe even have AI generated breaks, like, how much time or how much time has passed and you've not done something, or you've done something, you might want to pace yourself. Social interaction platforms, I think discussion groups. And again, this is very different for the way seniors interact. Like they're not necessarily very texty. So you might want to have like a space where they can write a blog or a story. So even though it's a social interaction platform, the kind of text and image that you use is very different. And so if you were working on the same product for millennials or Gen Z, you would want to enable chat. But with seniors, I would rather enable a story or a blog kind of a thing where they can showcase their pictures and stories, and others read and maybe leave comments. So you see, and that's different. Like that's just basically adding web pages. So you really have to decide based on what you need, how much content or technology you want to put. And community building. Now this is fun, right? For example, with Gen Z, a millennial, you could build an online community where, let's say, something like a Facebook group or similar to that on your website. But with seniors, when we do this, we actually do in person. So we take them for museums or whatever, and they actually like meeting others. So again, you can then use technology just to generate your list of events and things like that, but not substitute that in-person meeting. continuous learning. So again, like how you see in Netflix, since you watch this, you may want to watch this. So you can have those kind of things in lifelong learning. If you want to go one another step level, emotional support. So there is new technology, which is not yet commercialized, but in research, there's something called ambient monitoring, which let's say you have a video cam, like the way you're talking to me, and seeing my expressions, it can detect my mood. So again, that's pretty invasive technology. And depending on the country's rules and regulations, you can have emotional detection. And then if you see, okay, this senior is a little sad, let's boost them up with Mozart's symphonies. You can do that. At the moment, it's theoretical. All these things you can create maybe a nice research paper, but commercially, in Canada or other countries where privacy laws are pretty strict, you cannot do this. But it's possible in terms of possibilities. My favorite thing to use AI is in accessibility and data security. This is like seniors are so much victims of online fraud. So if I have to put my money, I would put it mostly in data security, making sure nobody's cards are leaked, nobody's personal emails are leaked, those kind of places. And that's more functional use of AI or machine learning, where preemptively I can know that my website has been either attacked or hacked or whatever, or it needs a maintenance or an update or whatever. And accessibility features, I think this is also more practical. Like you can get summaries, you can get translation, you can get image recognition, those kind of things. Like you see in Zoom now, you can have text enabled. Those kind of things are more practical. I think accessibility, inclusivity, and security. If you use these three reasons for your AI, I think you can be successful with seniors. And these are all the lovely audience that we've had from different venues that we've gone. And I hope you enjoyed the talk, and happy to take questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Nam. I think that your presentation was so relatable. And dare I say fun, because it was something that I think even when you said at the beginning that we are all presently engaging in lifelong learning just by attending the webinar, I felt like I should give myself a little pat on the shoulder. Like we've done something constructive being here. I will start the questions rolling.
Sure.
The first question. You highlighted early on in the presentation when looking at the history of lifelong learning that Canada got into this space a bit later than other countries. I think it was around 2007. And then in 2018, the fact that there are still, I thought, just 21 groups. I'm wondering, what is it? Is there a hesitancy for investment in this area? What's the reasoning behind it? Why are people seemingly running away from investment in this area?
I'm not here to criticize Canada, but in general, I think you need to understand this is a business answer, so this is not a philosophical answer. In Canada, healthcare is a public sector field, right? So when anything comes out of your own pocket, people are hesitant to do it because they think they've done their job by paying their taxes. And so the government should take care of it, right? So what happens is when there is anything which is vaguely aging, it's in the social sector and people expect either the government to subsidize it or pay for it. And government is not going to do that because it's busy doing other things. So that's one. I have had customers, let's say, and then there is also a slight private versus public sector mindset divide. So if I approached libraries with our content, they said, we cannot work with you because you're a private company, just because we are a private company. So there is a lot of that out there. And also, I think some countries, like mostly, if you even see health technologies, everything comes in the end to Canada once it's standardized and tested and globally accepted. So I think there is a certain level of safety, security, and calculated risk mindset, or rather low risk to no risk mindset. So I think that changes the landscape. And we've also seen, from my experience, people who buy our stuff are people who are high performers. So like retired economists are my clients, retired doctors, retired engineers. So an average blue collar worker is not buying Seniors Junction, not for the price, because our price is pretty competitive. It's not very expensive. So I think there is a social marketing aspect, because it took 50 years to market that we need to be fit, we need to stop smoking, right? So this is only a recent thing. And social marketing takes a lot of time. Individual companies like ours don't have the budget to do big time marketing, so we can do what we can do. And I think also as generations grow, I think one of the biggest business-wise factors you can tap in is most people, if you tell them, do you want to learn something? No. But if you ask them, do you want to get dementia? They'll say, no, I don't want. So you have to tap in the fear of not getting dementia, but convert it into a positive sale. And we don't have that narrative available yet, because we also have to then do cohort-based studies with universities to get the evidence that, okay, by lifelong learning for 10 years, this cohort reduced the risk by whatever else, given all factors controlled. So we don't even have those kind of studies supporting the work.
Okay, well, thanks for a very comprehensive response there, Nam. I think that it ties in very well with the next question, because you talked about marketing. And so my question really here is, you mentioned some significant barriers to lifelong learning, marketing being one of them. And I wondered, from your experience with Seniors Junction, what have you found works well in terms of marketing programs to older adults, and what doesn't work so well?
Okay, don't do anything digital. It doesn't work well. You'll waste your money. What works well is peer-based. So, and let them try it. So, which means if you've heard of Tupperware marketing, which is you host Tupperware parties and people got to try it and buy it, I think that still holds true. So the way that would work is you go to let's say a senior living or a community center or whatever group of people, give a talk, and then give them a trial to test it. And then you will see conversion. So the conversion rates are pretty bad, but there are some early adopters. And if you're an entrepreneur in this field, you need to have your income coming from somewhere, because this is an uphill task, because you have to do demand generation. There is no demand for what you're selling. It's like a jewelry product right now. So businesses are either oxygen, which means you need it, or medicine, which is you need it, but not every time, or jewelry, which is you may need it. So we come under jewelry category of businesses right now, and we want to move towards medicine and oxygen, but it'll take time. And so I have to hustle double jobs or triple jobs to manage that.
Yeah, fair point. I have a follow-up question. I mean, you spoke about, and I think what really resonated, because here at Perley Health, we talk about this all the time. We try to create and sustain meaningful activities for our residents and our tenants. And that's one of the things that you spoke about. Now, it's the idea that you're trying to balance education and entertainment. And is this something, when you and Paul met, that you deliberately tried to tackle both education and entertainment, or it sort of evolved that way generically?
Evolved. Because we started off with Renaissance music and all those Baroque stuff, because that's what his specialty was, and people don't like it. Like, there's some people like it. So now we've moved to Frank Sinatra, Lady Gaga, and K-pop and Gangnam Style. So we've made it more commercial. In that sense, the appeal has become more broader. And because Paul was also doing this popular music at Ottawa, because he had to teach non-music majors music. So we then just pulled off from that and then elaborated that list. There are 4 questions here. I can take them next if you want. So no, we learned it the hard way that we were very boring in the beginning, and then we had to be a little entertaining.
Yes. Okay. So I'll take a question here. I'll read this question from Margaret, who says, an older friend who has recently completely lost her eyesight. I think she would love this program, but is that possible?
Well, it is possible if somebody can help her log in on Zoom or something like that, or if she knows. There is a group available. I will look up the name of the group, but they do technology training for people with vision impairment. So with that, they can learn how to use computers and other things. And if she can use that, then she can use our program, because it's mostly auditory. And maybe once in a while, there might be an image which we are describing and you may not be able to see that. But because it's music and playlists are available, the easiest thing you can do is tell your friend to go on our website, YouTube, and just listen to the playlist in the beginning. But then I don't know if she knows how to navigate the internet. So I can find out the name of the organization which does technology training for visually impaired.
Okay, thank you for that response, Nam. I think that we've had a number of very pleasant comments where people say that your webinar has been very interesting. Thank you for sharing. And one person mentions that they love that you mentioned the safety of data as being an important thing. Great presentation. Thank you for sharing your research on your entrepreneurial social innovation project. Will this recording be available? Well, I'm glad you asked that question,
Yes.
Mary. Of course, the recording is going to be made available. We post all of our recordings from our webinar on our website, on the Perley Health website, where the CoE has its space. Lloyd has a very interesting question here. He says, is there a role for long-term care homes like Perley Health to acquire this kind of program for its residents, so residents don't need to pay for it?
Yeah, so we have our holiday sale going on. It's called Beat the Winter Blues. It's for $300 US. So originally it was $500, but for $500, but now reduced to $300 for 3 months. I have to put it on the website still, but you get 12 weeks of content. So you have ABBA, Beatles, Sinatra, Tony Bennett. I forget the rest, but you get that and you can take it and play it. And if you want to, Lloyd, try it out with us because we've not done it with LTC, but we know how to do it now. We can talk to you, like you can email me and we can test it out. Yeah.
Okay, great. I think now we also have comments which we'll share with you as well, because there are people who may be interested in partnerships. And I'm sure that's music to your ears. No pun intended.
Thank you.
But
Happy to. Fawn. Okay, yeah, I haven't seen Fawn in a while.
Yes,
Yeah, she was a PhD student with me. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I think that we have really enjoyed your presentation, and certainly we've had a lot of lively discussion as well at the end. So we're very thankful to have had you here today. And I think Nam has the distinguished honor of being our last presenter for the year.
Yeah,
so
I hope I didn't
Nam,
bore
that's a
you
special. You've done quite well, and it's a great way for us to end. I mean, here at the Center of Excellence, we've seen a dramatic increase in our attendees in our webinar series for the year, and we plan to continue building on this momentum in 2024. So we would like to thank also the attendees, all of you who have joined this webinar and who are engaging in lifelong learning by doing so. We hope that you do continue supporting our webinar series as we go into next year, into 2024. So I'd like to end by saying, I thank Nam, and I want to encourage attendees to stay tuned to our website and social media for further details on our next webinar, which will be in January 2024.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, also, when you're logging off of our website, you will be prompted to fill out a feedback survey. I want to encourage everyone to do that because we use that data in order to make our webinar series even better. And 2024, we're really coming out with a bang. So we look forward to receiving your feedback as well. So thank you so much. And thank you again, Nam.
Thank you.